the Massachusetts Government Act. This act infuriated the people of New England. It revoked the Massachusetts Colonial Charter. The Colonial Charter is basically sort of like the Constitution of a colony. It's a document issued by the king to the colonists, and it provided what the traditional rights and liberties of, as well as the government structure of the colony was. So Massachusetts had such a charter. Now, the Massachusetts Government Act of 1774 revoked that charter, got rid of that charter, and placed the colony under direct control of the British government. It also limited town meetings, which were a regular staple of life in the colony. These town meetings that were a fixture of New England life. In most of these towns would have a town meeting at least once a week. The town meeting in many traditional New England towns was about as common of occurrence as the weekly church meeting. In many cases, they were actually held in the same place. A lot of early New England towns, their church, their town hall, and their fort were all the same building. Kind of saves on time a little bit. All the important meetings are all happening in one place. Are the Native Americans attacking? You run to the meeting place. Is it Sunday? You go to the meeting place. It's the British invent a new tax? Yep, you go to the meeting place to rant and rave about it. But at any rate, not being able to have these meetings as often as they liked really got under people's skin, because this was a part of their life. Had been for them, their parents, their grandparents. So to suddenly have that taken away, that's when people get annoyed. Let's face it here, not everyone is going to be a merchant smuggler, right? Not everyone is doing that. Not everyone read Enlightenment papers and feels that the British are denying natural rights. But the average Joe in the public doesn't care. But is he going to care that he can't go to the town meeting anymore? Maybe. That's one of the few pieces of excitement in your life, is hanging out with your neighbors at the town meeting. Suddenly the town meeting is not happening anymore. You only get to do it once a year, unless the governor gives you special permission. That's going to eat at you. Then we have the Administration of Justice Act. Now, this act argued that all British soldiers charged with a crime, would stand trial in Britain, not in the colonies. Now, witnesses would be reimbursed for travel expenses, but not for wages lost. The big thing that rankled the colonists about this one is the fact that basically it would be very difficult for most people to testify. If a British soldier committed a crime against them, it would be very difficult for them to testify against this individual. Well, why? Well, one major reason is that these soldiers take it back to Britain. Now, so let's say, I'll use an example here. Let's say I saw a British soldier kill my buddy. I want to testify at the trial. Say, I saw him do it. Well, now they're saying, well, he gets to go back to Britain to face trial. So if you want to testify in the trial, you have to go to Britain. Now, you'll be reimbursed. What that means is, I'd have to put up the money first to travel to Britain. Then after the trial, I go, come back. Then the British government would pay me back later. But I got to have the money to put up front first. The other issue is, even though it's travel expenses, it's not wages lost. So, remember, travel is not fast. So, going to Britain would mean it's going to take me 2 or 3 weeks to cross the Atlantic by boat, by ship. Then I gotta be there for the trial. Then I gotta turn around, get on another ship, take another 2 to 3 weeks to get back. So somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks, wages are going to be lost. And while they'll reimburse me for what it costs me to travel, I'm not going to be reimbursed for what it cost me in wages. wages, because I'm not going to be working those 4 to 6 weeks if I'm traveling to Britain to testify. So as a result, only the independently wealthy would really be able to afford to go to Britain to pursue these charges. For poor people, it pretty much meant you were not going to be able to go. This really annoyed many people because they felt that the soldiers who were tried after the Boston Massacre, who were tried in the colonies, were given a fair trial. So even though the British argued their reason for doing this act was that they felt that with the atmosphere in the colonies, a British soldier would not get a fair trial in the colonies. That's why they had to go back to Britain. Colonists argued, we already showed you that we could, under extenuating circumstances, give a British soldier a fair trial. So why are you really doing this act? Moving on from the Administration of Justice Act, we have the Quartering Act, which required colonies to house and feed British soldiers at their own expense. So the Quartering Act of 1774 was just an extension of the Quartering Act of 1765, but it pretty much allowed for the same thing, that the colonies and individual colonial families had to house British soldiers, the standing British Army, at their own expense. Now, the Quebec Act. The Quebec Act really rankled a lot of feathers. And it's odd because it had probably the least to do with the colonists directly. So the first issue is that it granted lands in the Ohio River Valley to Quebec, which is an issue because those lands had originally been claimed by Virginia, New York, Pennsylvania, and even, I think, parts of Maryland had state claims on them. Now, it also allowed French civil law in Quebec, which was a reasonable accommodation to make to the former French province. Many individuals had contracts and other agreements that were already under French law and didn't want to have to deal with the issues of English law now being prevalent. Of course, the colonists who feel they're being deprived their rights as Englishmen and their rights according to British law. However, as colonists again feel they're being denied the rights of Englishmen to have a colony to their immediate north where English civil law is being flouted. It's just not being obeyed at all. And it's being replaced by a government that allows mix of French law and other laws that are not the traditional rights of Englishmen. Seems like to the colonists another assault on their liberty. Now, the other issue is that the Quebec Act permitted Catholicism and removed all references to Protestantism in the oath of allegiance for Quebec officials. Again, you had a large number of civil officials, your sheriffs, your tax collectors, your judges, prosecutors, etc. All these school teachers, etc. All these talented individuals who have been part of the French civil service system. When the colony suddenly becomes British, these people, these individuals, now find themselves as British subjects. Now, of course, these people, most of them, if not all of them, were Catholics. And now suddenly they were faced with an oath of allegiance to the British Empire that had specific references to Protestantism, which left them with an issue. They either had to forego their religion in order to swear themselves in as good British subjects, or they couldn't make the oath of allegiance, which then would have rendered them as traitors and non-citizens. Now, by removing these references, which something that George III authorized, now these individuals could once again serve as loyal subjects to the crown. But to the Patriots, the Quebec Act was despised. Why? Well, one, it established Catholicism on American soil. A lot of Patriots, remember, they're in Massachusetts. They're what religion? They're Puritans. Or they're enlightened, they're part of the Enlightenment and they're deists. So you have these deists and these Puritans who both are not big fans of Catholicism. And now suddenly, in their eyes, what is the king doing? He's allowing Catholicism on their soil in a British colony. The territory didn't have English law. And then to make it all worse, to add insult to injury, that territory, Quebec, is now being expanded at the expense of the 13 colonies, at that Ohio Valley, that land that those colonies had previously claimed for themselves, that is now becoming property of Quebec. Now, once again, we got to go over the Proclamation of 1763 because this is really burning their shapes right now. Why? Well, again, because it's taken away lands these guys want, right? It granted the land west of the Appalachian Mountains and east of the Mississippi to the Native Americans, which meant that British subjects could not settle on this frontier. Remember, we went over earlier, what are all these poor people that come to the Americas? What do they want? They want land. They want their own land. That's why people tried the indentured servant thing and lost their lives. It's why people moved to Pennsylvania when William Penn was offering decent prices on this land. Well, more poor people are coming. More people that have found themselves poor. They want land. They want to start over as farmers. But there's not a lot of new land left unclaimed in the proper colonies. But to the west of them, there's land belonging to the natives, what to them is unclaimed land. Land they could clear and make into farming towns. But the British are saying, no, you can't. Now, it makes sense why the British are doing it. They don't want war with the natives. So their attitude is, well, okay, the natives and the colonists can't get along. We're going to put the colonists on one part of the land, we're going to put the natives on the other. That way, then, we don't have conflicts. But the colonists aren't happy because some of them, they want to move into that land. So that concludes our discussion on the responses. Now, as this anger continues to build, we are going to reach the point of no return. In our next installments, we're going to discuss things where the colonies take that fateful step into outright revolution. It will not be long before we discuss the battles of Lexington and Concord and the drafting of the Declaration of Independence.